Shop Talks. It's a production of the Ink Kitchen, which is an online resource for information, videos, articles, more to come, podcast soon. And it's sponsored by Impressions, who put on the show, and sponsored by Haynes and Hirsch. And we have more tomorrow and a couple more today, and they're all free at all the ISS shows. It'll be recorded. If you see the lovely Liz there later and get your scan, we'll let you know when the videos are released. I have with me today Josh Elsworth from Stahls, and we're going to talk about the future of transfers, or as I've begun telling my customers, because it has the wrong connotation, indirect prints. So I think that you can't talk about the future without talking about the present, so he's going to show some of his more advanced things now, and then we'll maybe discuss where things are going to head from here. Take it away, Josh.
Great. Appreciate you having me, Rick. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk about transfers and also to look into the crystal ball. One of my favorite things to do is to try to predict the future, and the best way to predict the future is invent it, right? You start talking about it, and we start chasing it as an industry. So when we talk about transfers, I was having some conversations before we started this. It's all about on demand. It's being able to make to order. And so we're seeing heat press equipment get a lot more sophisticated with what it can do. We're seeing the fabric marketplace evolve a lot with heat sensitive fabrics and different fabric blends like tri-blends that happened 10 years ago or so. We're seeing more and more blends of fabric. So one thing I like to say is tech and texture. So that's really what transfers are all about. It's about being able to apply technical fabrics, having the best feel, the best stretch, the best weight, be able to stock those and be able to apply them to order or even make them to order in some cases. And texture, we see it on the other side. So folks either want really thin and soft, or they want something with some dimension and some texture, that sort of tactile element, so the customer can touch it. And we see that across all categories, really. So whether it's transfers onto headwear, footwear, bags, jackets, there are a ton of items you can print with transfers. You just have to be able to fit them on a heat press and get them flat to get accurate time, temperature, and pressure.
Or not flat if they're dimensional.
Not flat. You can get the transfer not flat, but if you can get the item flat, that's the key. Otherwise, you start to get the scorch marks. But yeah. So when we look at transfers today, there is a huge number of choices under the umbrella that we like to call heat printing, because people don't like the word heat transfer, or vinyl, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, I think a lot of people's experience with transfers is seeing Salvation Army with Care Bears or Farrah Fawcett transfers from back in the day all peeled off, and so it has a really bad connotation. Yeah, that's why indirect print.
Yeah, my first experience was a T-shirt my grandparents brought me back from Ocean City, and it was the classic. My grandparents went on vacation to Ocean City, and all they got me was this crappy T-shirt, right? And it cracked.
And it was crappy.
Yeah, it was actually crappy, so it was accurate, too. It didn't lie. So when we look at the whole category, you can break it up into a lot of different ways. I like to talk through 4 basic types of transfers. So we have the category of heat transfer vinyl and screen printed transfers, and these are good for spot color customization because I'm either burning a screen or I'm cutting and weeding in layers. So we see a lot of innovation in those categories with the finishes and the looks that you can achieve. Certainly in the heat transfer vinyl category, we're seeing things like reflective come on strong. We're seeing a lot of tonal printing be really strong, whether that's a reflective black on a black t-shirt, or even the innovation of clear media that can be applied to the shirt in both matte finishes, which makes the shirt look laser etched, and I have a sample I'll pass around here in a second, or gloss finishes, which makes it look wet. But when you look at those categories of heat transfer vinyl and screen printed transfers, we're talking spot color, and we're paying by the color when we order it, when we make it, depending on what part of the process you're at in your shop. The other 2 categories start to solve some of those issues of number of colors. And so there's the huge movement, of course, that unless you've been under a rock for the past 10 years, that is digital printing across many different ways in the industry. We've seen innovation on things like the digital squeegee, where we're starting to integrate digital printing into the screen printing process. We're starting to see that movement translate into transfers as well. And to me, that's one of the most exciting new things. that we see happening. So print cut has existed for a while, where you can print on vinyl, as they call it, right? It's really polyurethane. It's not vinyl at all, so it's safe. So that's another term we need to change because it has a negative connotation. But we have that print cut process, but there's some limitations with that. You have to have very basic graphics because you have to weed and clean them all as part of the process. And then also, really, you don't save any money. There's no economies of scale. So whether I'm doing 1 or 1 million, it's about the same price for print cut vinyl, other than getting a better price on a roll. And so that's why these digital screen printed transfers is a category that I'm excited about. So this basically combines digital printing with screen printing. So we're leveraging the best of
Ms. Liz.
digital printing to get the color. And then on the back, we're screen printing it. And the way you screen print it can vary. So you can screen print the back with several technologies. I think where it's heading in the industry in general is water-based technologies. So the sample that's going around is a water-based transfer that it's backed with. And it also has a dye block adhesive. So performance polyester, as I was mentioning, tech and texture. On the technical side of it, garments are bleeding. They're causing dye migration issues. So we're starting to see more transfers be developed with dye blockers. And there's many technologies in dye blocking technology. But what we're trying to do is, as an industry, is make it softer, make it more pliable, not as crunchy when you use a dye blocker.
Some of that's also the machinery now is better, right? With the heat underneath, or some of those things allow you to apply the transfers better also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important point. So as an industry, we've always heated from the top for the last 30 years, or whenever the first heat press was invented, right? And now we're doing two things. We're going two completely opposite directions. We're getting more sophisticated with the professional users, and a lot of those will invest in heat presses that heat from underneath. So basically you create a heat sandwich, which leaves a scorch mark on the inside of the shirt, which is a much better place for it.
Oh, a much better place.
Right, because nobody's really going to complain about that. So we drop that top heat down really low, and then we heat it up from the bottom at our higher temp, and that helps us get to those adhesives quicker to get a result that's not going to scorch on poly or tri-blends, any of those heat-sensitive fabrics.
If you have a really small place, you can hack that by tacking it hardly at all and then turning it inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we gave that tip to somebody. They weren't quite ready to invest in, the latest heated lower platins because there is a barrier to entry on price. But you're right, an effective way is you tack it on the outside, just enough to get the carrier off usually, and then turn that garment inside out and run the longer dwell. The only caution I would give you is when you start running with heat from inside of the garment, you need to be considerate of the weight and the thickness of the garment, because it's going to take a different amount of time to get through a tee versus a fleece, for instance. So you may need to run a longer dwell time on the fleece. Some of the other things that I want to talk about is the texture element. So if you've walked the floor, you've probably seen a ton of different suppliers that offer dimensional logos. And to your point, the heated lower heat presses and attachments, whether that's in the headwear category or whether that's in your standard 16x20 press category, is allowing you to apply different dimensional logos more than ever accurately. So when we talk about dimensional logos, we think of embroidered patches as an opportunity. We think of things like leather patches as an opportunity that can be cut on a laser and backed with adhesive. You can make these yourself in your shop if you source the material. We talk through twill products, and we're seeing digital incorporated with twill. If you look at an NBA jersey that's sort of the mid-level swingman jersey, a lot of those are produced with sublimated twill. So we can get the advantage of the professional look and feel, but we can get full color and multicolor and effects like sometimes the perforated effect is sublimated on. It's not actually perforated on their jersey style. So we can pass those around so everybody can feel the texture, but heating from underneath helps this because these are really thick. If you were to heat them from just the top, you'd probably have to run a 60-second dwell, which would absolutely kill the fabric or kill the hat that you want to put it on, leaving a crease. So you got to get from underneath and heat it from both sides. So I'm just curious, out of who we have here, how many people actually own a heat press? Right. So you guys are figuring out the advantages of heat printing. How many are executing the vinyl cutting as a process in their shop? All right. Do you guys like to weed? No? You don't like the weed, right? I love the weed. Some people say it's therapeutic. I say you're sick in the head, right?
Some people like weed.
Yeah, some people. You're not that kind of weed, Rick. Not that kind of weed. Yeah, the Sublime concert last night, that was evident, right? But anyways, when you think about that process, that's one of the huge pain points for shops is weeding. You want to be able to do quantities of one. You wanted to be able to do these cool effects. It's not always a flat image. So you want reflective or flock or silicone-based material that can be vinyl cut, but you don't want to complete the weeding process. And so we're seeing a little bit of it already on laser-friendly materials where shops will take a laser engraver, and assuming it's a polyurethane-based material, it's safe to put onto your laser engraver. And rather than cutting traditionally and weeding the excess away to clean the graphic, actually programming it to cut through the centers of cavities on large designs, or even etching or blading away the adhesive for small, intricate designs. And the detail that you're able to achieve with that is unbelievable. So I think we'll see in the future that get faster, because right now the holdback from that is when you're etching away, it just takes a ton of machine time. So on your entry-level lasers with your limited bed size, you can really tie up that machine, creating small logos. But I've seen folks create even tagless labels in quantities of one on laser cutting equipment. So everybody's chasing to figure out how can we eliminate weeding as a process. Some are coming up with tables that make it quicker to do to reduce the time. Some are leveraging lasers. We see two-step and three-step transfer paper technologies, toner printer technologies to eliminate the weeding process. And we were chatting earlier, I was chatting to a gentleman earlier, and we talked about the potential of UV printing in the future for eliminating weeding, because the UV ink actually sits on the surface of the heat transfer vinyl. So the idea, if I could jet UV in a negative image on the design and then cut it, would that be enough to be able to apply and block that adhesive from transferring? So if we can eliminate weeding, I think we can see heat transfer as a technology get even better and better with these effects. All right.
Some more show and tell there?
I got all kinds of show and tell, yeah. So here's a good example of reflective materials. And so we're seeing reflective materials not just in silver now, but we're seeing reflective materials in color. Another thing that we're seeing out there is a lot of unique placements. You can see kind of the sleeve or the cuff placement on this.
Does it reflect in color, or it is a color and reflects?
It is a color and reflects. So it always reflects silver back to the source. So the silver one is going to be more of your official 3M ANSI certified product if I was decorating for a roadside work crew. But if I'm decorating for fashion, using the different colors of reflective are really cool, and we're seeing that trend. Here's a good example of the clear material that I was mentioning earlier. So the idea that we can use a clear, and it looks like the garment's almost laser etched, but we can do it with just a vinyl cutter in a fraction of the time. And so I think this combined with this is pretty powerful. So we're starting to see clear, thicker materials in heat transfer vinyl, whether that's in a polyurethane-based product or a silicone-based product. You can incorporate different thicknesses and clear media that produces a really good result. And the benefit, of course, of silicone is I can start to apply this even on sublimated fabrics without having risk of dye migration. So products like the camo hex patterns that you're seeing out there, any of the camouflage jerseys, silicone's really a good solution for decorating sublimated fabrics for a post-application.
You can hand those around, right? Liz, you can hand those around.
Yeah, you can pass them all around. Just don't steal them. If you do, sell something with it, right? All right, so, and then we're also seeing on a different side, because it's personalization, right? So there's a lot of growth in whether it's names, numbers, hashtags, monograms, unique sayings, being able to take any item and offer personalization. So it's no surprise there's a lot of growth in online web stores. client-specific web stores with how we can market today to an audience of one. It's easy to take a concept, spin up a store, and produce on demand with heat printing as a technology. So this shows you an example of what may be sold to somebody that's interested in monogramming. Rather than having to embroider this, which is the traditional way, people usually don't think they can heat press this Sherpa fabric, which you see in a lot of vendors' booths that are trending. You can actually cut a product like a flock, which pairs very well, and all you need to do is raise that print area, isolate that print area with a pad, and you're able to decorate, I'd say, practically any fabric with a heat press, as long as you have the right tools and techniques. And then the last one, actually I got a pocket full, probably should have wanted to share that. This gives you an example of the digital screen printed transfers in the category. So stretch materials as well, with stretch and recovery. So this, you can get a feel of the water-based type of style that the market's trending to, where we passed around the sample with the dye block on the back. And anybody still selling glitter in their store, right?
People and crows like shiny things that'll be around forever.
Yeah, so we thought rhinestones would go away. Yeah, they're still here. Crows love it. So glitter is also still popular as well. We still see a lot of growth in glitter. I think we'll see glitter get lighter weight, we'll see glitter get stretchable, and we'll see printable glitter like this in all of those different substrates. So now I can incorporate the best of full color printing onto a glitter based media. So much like the concept of sublimating twill, just being able to create these looks on top of unique textures and finishes. Do we take questions in this?
Yes, we do. So the question is the last one a vinyl cut process? A cut process.
So is that a cut process? The answer is yes. It's actually a print and cut. So we're printing that particular one with solvent or eco-solvent inks, so like a large format printer. But you can also, we're seeing sort of the large format print space changing a lot, and so we're finding more heat transfer films and print receptive coatings that can be used with latex as well, because we're seeing a lot of growth in large format in that category.
Other questions? Well, we wait for you to formulate them. So if you want to talk more about transfers, I think a lot of it you have to see and touch and feel. What's your booth?
That's so bad, I don't know that answer.
Anyway, Stahls, look it up.
It's right inside of the front entrance, not the arena entrance where we're at, but the front entrance. You can't miss it. It's 3000 aisle, I believe.
And then Carrie's in the audience here. She's from FM Expressions. That's another place that has a lot of different transfers, water-based now and stuff. That's a big orange sign there that you can see. She doesn't know her number either. So, all right, other questions about transfers? Got an expert here.
And there's a lot of transfer providers, and I think the name of the game is speed, right? And so we're seeing a lot of the transfer providers get quicker with their delivery, which is great as well. So you can manufacture this in-house if you want, but speed is a big deal. And investment size on something like water-based is a big deal for all of the transfer providers in the company. So we try to service it quick so you can turn those orders in 3 to 5 days.
How long does it last, the water-based transfers?
Yeah, so I think the water-based transfers, there are a bunch of different styles on the market, so they'll all vary. So let me talk generally, if I can. So the water-based, the advantage of that is typically it's highly durable. And in this case, on the one I passed around, it's even industrial wash friendly. So even high temp wash, you're gonna get great durability. We stop our testing in our lab at 50 cycles, wash and dry, and we call that the life of the garment.
Which one was the water-based sample, just for people to know?
The little piece that was stretchable.
Okay,
that was the
thanks.
digital water-based sample.
And what was your other question, sir? What's the difference between a digital and a screen water-based transfer?
So the difference between digital and screen water-based transfers is you're going to have the same base ink The difference is on the standard water-based process, we're going to have to burn a screen for every color to be able to print that. Whereas on the digital process, we can get a lot more colors because we can digitally print the ink down and then just back it with a common color like white or a block adhesive. And so therefore, I'd say if you have 3 or more colors, then it'd be more cost effective to go with the digital process. But the one thing I want to point out is with digital, typically we're working with a CMYK color palette, so you're not going to be able to hit the full library of the Pantone book for color matches. So if you're very particular about a certain color match, the spot color process would be a better fit in that case.
I want to ask, actually, are you seeing growth for just-in-time or on-demand printing being replaced by transfers on the shelf? So it's sort of it's halfway between digital printing on demand and screen-printed shirts that would sit on the shelf with, a cost that's not high. Is that growing at all? Because it would seem like that would be a great solution for a lot of online stores.
Yeah, I would say that where we're at right now, the largest growth we're seeing is people ordering transfers just in time, and they are applying pressure to the transfer manufacturers to be able to ship them later and get them there quicker so they can service that need. I think if we can solve either the size of the equipment investment to be able to make your own transfers, because there's a pretty big barrier to entry to that for a lot of shops, and there's a technical expertise that's a little bit different. Or if we can eliminate that weeding process that I was talking about earlier, I think you would see a lot of growth in people making their own. But the reality is for a small business, which is the majority of the shops out there, their number one issue is time. And sometimes they don't even have the time to be able to sit there and weed.
I guess I was thinking more of like, say, I have these online stores for, say, Amnesty International. Would it make sense at some point to, make transfers so you're not investing in the shirt inventory, but you're not having to take the time it takes to digitally print the shirt? You seeing any of that, or is that not happening yet?
We see a ton of it, actually. Yeah, we see transfers used all the time for fulfillment of orders from online stores.
Right.
So a lot of the customers still, though, they'll put the online store on a timer, and they will close the store and they will batch manufacture the order so they can order all of the garments and the transfers at once. And
so
then
they're not stocking the transfers.
Correct. Now, others have a different model where they launch the store, and depends on your revenue model. Sometimes you'll charge a setup charge to the end client, and that setup charge covers the ordering of the transfers. And I have others yet that really simplify the artwork so they don't get into anything too complex, but they will absolutely cut, weed, impress, or print and cut, or use a toner printer on demand to order every day.
So what's the current time that most transfers you can store for without using them, and they'll still work? And is that changing at all?
The company word is 1 year, right, if stored properly. I think the water-based requires some extra care with trying to keep them away from moisture. But in reality, customers sometimes apply transfers 2 and 3 years later with great results. So I would still try to keep to a year as far as cycling through your inventory.
And is there any developments on that front and that they'll last longer, or is that probably that's not super important at the moment?
It hasn't been super important as transfer manufacturers, right? We want you to reorder, but point taken.
Other questions?
See that crease on the hat?
The crease on the hat.
Is there something that can be done?
Something that can be done about the crease on the hat.
Yeah.
You know what? That's a good one, because I know there's a machine answer to that, right?
Yes, I'm trying to be delicate about the whole
sort
sales pitch
I
here.
told you not to sell, but you have an item I think you should tell people about, actually.
Okay, this particular hat was heat pressed with a normal hat press. And so this crease has plagued people that wanted to get into the category of headwear for years. And so now we've created a machine that has a silicone molded base where one platen fits every hat that actually heats from the bottom. And so that machine, where you're heating from the top and bottom, eliminates the crease on any cap, including structured caps, low profile caps, visors, beanies, etc. Yep. You can apply directly over the seam. Absolutely.
We have one, and it's great. I don't mind you plugging that one. That's a good one. That I couldn't wait to get it, and it's everything you guys said it would be, actually.
Yeah, it's it's probably, we don't even need salespeople for that machine. We just need to put it out in the front of the booth with some hats and a little how-to video. It's really easy.
Other questions? Ask for recommendation on vinyls on a full color image. Is that it?
On a full color image, what's the fabric type that you want to apply to?
A blended shirt.
That's all right. The reason I asked the question is because I would, in most transfer categories, you're going to get different recommendations if you're just doing a basic t-shirt versus if you're doing something that's heat sensitive, or you're probably not going to see nylon on a t-shirt. So most adhesives will stick to cotton and polyester, and then you're really looking at the product and saying, what gives me the best feel and what temperature does it apply at? And so in the case of a print cut vinyl on a t-shirt like that, the challenge with print cut is once you go too big on the art coverage area, you start to kind of feel it, and nobody likes that feel on their shirt, which is one of the reasons that there's a challenge there. And most people for full front digital graphics utilize DTG as a better solution. But if you wanted something thin and something soft, I would probably go with something that's 100 microns or less when you're searching.
Where are things headed in terms of, I know a couple objections to transfers are how the ink penetrates into the garment and the shininess.
Yeah, so the market says matte finish, right? And then the market says gloss finish, and then it says semi-gloss. It's kind of like paint colors when, you're trying to, but basically you can do it anyway. So we're starting to see now a higher demand for matte finishes. So we achieve that matte finish in two ways. One, through just the casting and the manufacturing of the film, but in the case of a transfer like this, it's through the innovation in the cover sheet that's actually resting on top of the paper. So, and this is an interesting tip, we see a lot of shops right now, if the cover sheet gives them a gloss finish and they want to make it a matte finish or more of a screen print-like look, I have some shops that will actually do a post-application with sandpaper on top of it to add some texture to it. So you can experiment with different textures and cover sheets and do a post-application for like 5 seconds, and usually the film or the transfer will take on that look, feel, style. Or a casting paper would work as well.
And how about penetration into the garment?
Can you clarify?
So in some ways, one reason they don't wash as well sometimes is transfers kind of sit up on the surface, as opposed to when you print inks, especially thin ones that penetrate into the fabric more.
So,
I mean, when people are trying to replicate a screen printed look.
when you're trying to replicate a screen printed look and you want something that looks like it's blended in the garment, you're probably going to pick a transfer type, like a hot split style transfer that's just the ink and no adhesive. So most transfer manufacturers will market their fully opaque adhesive where white's going to look white and you get good coverage as an all-purpose. But usually if you look a little deeper in the catalog, there is a soft or a vintage finish product that blends more into the shirt and feels more like a direct screen.
All right, maybe take one more question. Ron. He said there used to be a product where you printed it in a mirror image or backwards or something, and it was very thin. And do you have anything like that now?
Yeah, so that was a cool product that had a short lifespan for whatever reason. But the concept was that you would cut a heat transfer vinyl, and rather than pressing it at the standard setting, there was actually colorant in the adhesive instead of just clear. And it was a cold peel material. So we basically had a penicillin invention where we heated it a little bit too hot and somebody hot peeled it in the office, and it just left like the image of the design, and it was highly durable. And then you could experiment with different textures and behind the shirt to almost give gradients, so it really blended in and felt like water-based printing. So right now, I don't think there's anything on the market currently like that.
So eventually we'll go back to the future?
There's enough demand. How many people would be interested in something like that? Okay.
He's a big guy.
Okay, we have some of this. Yeah.
All right, I think I want to thank you all for coming. If you let the lovely Liz scan you, you will find out when this is online and the other talks that we had this weekend. We should stick around for the Bella presentation about some future garment stuff. And tomorrow we have a bunch of talks, and check us out online in kitchen.com. Thanks a lot to Josh. How about a hand for Josh?
Thank you all. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Oh, thanks.